Somebody told me I had bad fuel caps, and I did. They had 2 vents in them. The typical tube, these are the new ones here. This is not the ones I had the problems with. But the old ones also had a tube like this, but they also had a vent up inside that would allow the gasoline to come out underneath. So I got these new gas caps from Univair. They are a whole lot better than the old ones. They did resolve that problem. However, others have told me that the problem is it leaks around this seal when the tanks are real full. So I did remove these last year and I put new gaskets, but the problem is these screws are not sealed. So gasoline will come up and then leak out underneath the screw heads. Now, if you don't fill your tanks all the way up, typically that's not a problem. The problem, of course, where I had is if I would fill them up after a flight and then I'd leave it in the hangar and then it would get warm and expand and then it would leak out. So obviously I shouldn't do that. I haven't been doing that, but just a couple times that I did, or it had happened in flight, you can see the ugly staining on top of the wing. I can actually take that off, but it's a pain. So anyway, there is a fix for this. Part of the problem is these screws, this metal that the fuel tank is made out of is so flimsy that even if these 2 screws do get a good seal, it's going to leak between the screws. And all there are is Tinnerman nuts on the back side of these screws, which I find crazy. So there is a fix, and Billy Carter actually came up with the fix. And he has a really good fix, and I have some pictures of something similar that I made. Sorry, Billy, but I took your idea and I made my own. Regardless, I think it's going to fix the problem. So let me show you what I made per Billy Carter's idea. And hats off to Billy Carter for coming up with this idea. So his actually looks better than mine. You can see mine is handmade. But what this does is this is a backing plate that will go underneath in the fuel tank, and it will allow this to be as a backing plate. So we put, and that's what this slot is for, is to wiggle it down in the fuel tank after we get the neck off. And so you get that down in there, then you put a seal on top of it, then we put another seal on top of that and squeeze these together. And this being of aluminum will be much better than a Tinnerman nut. Also, these are extremely expensive sealed nuts. I don't recall the technical name for them, but I had a hard time finding them actually. And there's actually a little gasket under there that seals them off, and that would prevent the fuel from leaking up through the screw. So that's the idea. So tonight I'm going to put them on. I may only get one on tonight because my lovely wife has dinner going. So we'll get one on and see how it goes. And again, Billy Carter, man, thank you for coming up with this great idea. I think you got a winner here. And Billy Carter's the guy to get them from. This took a lot of time, and I was fortunate to have some unique tools that I could make this. But Billy Carter is the place to get these going forward. All right, here we go. Fuel neck off. Incidentally, make sure that you have a marker that you mark what the forward direction of the filler is. Otherwise, you'll index it to the wrong place and your caps then won't be indexed forward. Make sure that you have a magnet, a strong magnet, because you probably will drop some of the Tinnerman nuts down in the fuel tank, and it's not a problem because they're well attracted to the magnet. So anyway, here's what I'm saying here. See how this metal on the fuel tank is flimsy? It's just not, it's okay, but and maybe mine's got more problems than others, but that's the idea of taking this and getting it underneath here with a seal on the top of this and the seal on top of that. And so in between these, in addition, these capsulated nuts are sealed and will prevent fuel from leaking up through the threads, and I think that's where a lot of my problem was. So we'll keep on it here. There's a lot of these gaskets on the market. If you're going to do this job, don't get cheap gaskets. The best gaskets to get is a gasket made by the real gasket company, okay? And for our Stinson 108, this is the number right there, RG108, or RG-108. And these are very good. So again, we're gonna put one underneath, between this and the bottom, underside of the fuel tank. And we're going to put one of these on top. And then we're going to put the fuel cap on top. Now, I'm also got different screws. So I'm using machine screws, obviously, rather than Tinnerman screws. So that will, we'll be able to get more torque with them as well. And incidentally, I do have a little torque driver that we'll use to get an equal torque. So because I'm out in the hangar working by myself and no one's here to hold the camera for me, I wish I had somebody here to hold the camera so you could watch me try to get this in this hole underneath here. Okay, so this is kind of like a puzzle. I got to get this inside the fuel tank using this slit here. And I think it can be done. Then once I get this under there, then I've got to get this gasket on top of it. So, I've been thinking this through. I've laid awake at night thinking how I'm going to do this, but here it goes. I will let you know how it goes. I got it in. It actually wasn't as tough as I thought. So I got the backing plate in here, and I had a longer bolt that I just have temporary in there just to hold it. So this may be easier than getting the gasket on here, but we'll see. So it wasn't all that difficult. So of course it had to have that slit in it. So here, let's put the gasket in there and on top of that. See how that report? I have the gasket in there, and it's on top of the fuel cap. So far, so good. I did get a little longer screws, and I'll show those to you when I get them on here. So my thinking is here now. So this is, that mark is the front of the cap. I'm going to put it on here and then come over to the other side and put a screw in, and then come back over, take this bolt out and replace it with a screw while holding up the inside. That's the theory. We'll see how it goes. Problem, you remember how this was all bent and dented out here and it was flared out? Well, it was expanded so much I couldn't get my screw through here. So I'm using a C-clamp going around here and flattening this out. I'm not done, I got a lot more work to do, but it's helping quite a bit. Okay, it's the next day, and I found out that the screws that I was trying to use were not long enough. So I had to go to Wichita and get longer screws. So I've got several packs of screws here, and out of one of these, I think we're going to find a screw that works. But one of the things I wanted to show you here is the difference in the quality of the gaskets. Remember I mentioned use real gaskets. So this is the, let me get the light, it's kind of dark out here. This is the real gasket. This is good stuff, thick. This is the original gasket. And look how much thinner it is. Okay, I'll put these two next to each other. If you can see that. So, if you do this, get the real gaskets, okay? And get 4 of them. You're gonna need 4 of them. 2 for each side. So, anyway, we got longer screws and we'll start putting it together. And I also picked up some little O-rings. I don't know if they're necessary, but I do not want this thing to leak. So I'll show you what I'm doing here in just a second. You're gonna need screws that are about 3/4 of an inch long. Okay, so here's the screw that I believe is gonna work best. AN 526C 1032R12. Okay, they're 3/4 inch long screws. So if you kind of look at where this is going to match up here, and sorry for the light, but it's the way it is out in the dark hangar. So put a little space on there, account for the thickness of the fuel tank. That's about where that screw is going to set depth in that that threaded encapsulated nut insert there, whatever it's called. So anyway, I think this is going to work. 3/4 of an inch long. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do is, I know this is overkill, but I'm going to put a little tiny O-ring underneath that screw just to seal it off as well. So I think it's an overkill and I may have problems with it, but we're going to try it. So I put these little tiny O-rings under here, probably an overkill, but I got these from the National Aircraft Parts Association store, and when I tighten the screws down, they pretty well flatten out, and they're still there. So I think they'll do a little bit of good. Maybe somebody can tell me if I'm doing this is not a good idea. But I have no sealant or anything on there because I didn't want anything to get in the tank. So far so good. I've got 3 screws there, tightened them down pretty tight, and man, I really like what the plate is sucking this up flat here. So I will go ahead and put the rest of the screws in, and then I will snug them up with a torque driver, make sure they're all equal, and report back. This is the torqueometer that I use to bring these screws all up to an even torque. I checked the internet, and it says like 30 inch-pounds on stainless steel screws like this, but you know, I took them to 15, and looking at the gasket, it's just starting to squash out a little bit, and I think 15 is going to be fine here. So this torqueometer, I bought it on the internet, and ironically, it's for bicycles. I think I paid a whole $20 for it or something like that. And I checked it against a more better known brand, and it works pretty well. So I went around back and forth, keep increasing the torque into 15, I believe is what I got it on now. So seems to be pretty good. And I tell you, Billy Carter, you are a wizard. This is rock solid. This is so much better. I mean, before I could move it around and I could tell that it wasn't taking a really good seal. I think we got a winner here. Billy, thank you so much for coming up with this idea here. This is awesome. All right, I get excited about goofy things like a fuel inlet neck that doesn't leak. I get excited about fuel caps that don't leak. So I am looking forward to filling up the tank next time I'm on a trip, and hopefully having it not leak. And now I got to clean off all that crud there. And so onward to do the left side wing. Here we go. I came back, I left it set for, I don't know, 15 minutes or something. I came back and retorqued it, and it seems like the gaskets are taking a set, and so I was able to retorque them to 15 inch pounds. Inch pounds, make sure it's inch pounds, not foot pounds. So the other thing is, I remember using real gaskets on the valve covers, and it did indicate on the valve covers that torque them down, and then I don't recall what the procedure was, but come back and check it again, and they do take kind of a set, or the gaskets tend to compress just a bit. So, but man, that's a really good seal around there. So boys and girls, I'm excited. I'll show you, I'm about to start in on the left or the pilot side here, and you can see how bad this is bent from people dropping the fuel nozzle in there and bending that up. So I'm going to use my C-clamp that I used on the other side, a little tiny C-clamp, to go in there and flatten that out. So we'll see how she does. Something I want to mention, when you do this job and put these kits in, you are bound to knock some crud from the back side here. You know, just look at these Tinnerman washers here, how rusty and corroded they are. You are bound to knock some crud down in the tank. So I would urge you to use caution for the next few hours of flight. Make absolutely sure that you are sumping the tanks, and of course sumping the draining off the main sump at the gasilator. And you may also want to check the gasilator for crud as well. So I know there's screens inside the tanks here that take care of most of that, but some of this crud we're knocking loose is pretty small stuff. So just use caution. You're bound to knock some crud off, and use caution on your next few hours of flight. The things I forgot to mention is the holes in the neck will need to be enlarged a bit. I used a taper reamer, and just by hand it worked out just fine. So add that to your tool list, as well as a small inch-pound torquometer. Okay, got the pilot side done, so they're both done. And Billy Carter, again, thank you for coming up with this novel concept. This is so much more solid than it was before. I believe this is going to secure, prevent the fuel leaking from the neck. This backing plate and the encapsulated nuts back there, sealed nuts, and on top of that is going to do a great job. And just don't forget, if you have not, if you have problems with fuel leaking, the first thing to do is check your fuel caps. Let me go get my old fuel cap and I'll show you this. This is the fuel cap that was on the Stinson when I bought it. And last year, or I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, I was at Oshkosh and sitting at the in the red barn there. And I think it was Billy Carter I was talking to. I was telling him, man, I said, I fill up my tanks and the tanks leak out. He said, the first thing to do is check your fuel cap. He said, go check your fuel cap and see if you got a vent on it. I said, well, yeah, I got a vent. It's got a tube. No. He says, it's got two vents. He said, they're all supposed to have this tube. He said, take your cap off and look in the inside there. Let me turn this around to the light here. He said, if you see a hole inside your cap, besides the vent hole, you got a bad cap. He said, Univair put these out for a long time with that hole in there. So when the fuel expands, it gets in that hole, and it'll leak out on top of your wing. And so that's the first thing you want to check. Do you have defective caps? Now, frankly, these caps probably could be fixed. That hole could be, put a little screw in it or something. But anyway, I like this cap so much better. looked better, and it was just a cleaner design. So anyway, that's got these from Univer. They're kind of expensive. But anyway, between the cap and the Billy Carter reinforcement back there, and a total of 4, 2 on each side, the real gaskets, and the 3/4 inch 1032 stainless steel, torque these up all even. I am pretty sure that this is going to resolve the problem. So I know I did a video on the caps some months ago or a year or so ago, and I just used the regular gaskets. That's before I realized that I could get real gaskets. That video is old and outdated. In fact, I'm going to take it down. So this is everything that you need to do, all these things here. So this is part of the benefit of supporting the International Stinson Group. It motivates owners like myself to provide educational information to help other people. If you're not a member of the International Stinson Group, please check them out. I think the dues are $35, or it's cheap, whatever it is, $50 a year, and that helps support educational material and stuff like that. So we all need to pitch in together and keep these old airplanes flying. All right, this is Brett from Neodesha, Kansas, signing off.